Last episode, I ended on a promise about the cheapest thing on the list. Not a program and not a budget. Redesigning work you already do and already pay for, and the first place to look is the hour you already spend reading somebody else's code. This is the first candidate answer this series has offered, which makes it the first one graded against the rubric I published before any candidate answer was examined. No new evidence airs here, and what is new is the arrangement rather than the material. And the standing hedge stands. Learning used to arrive free inside cheap junior work. Then the price of that work fell to almost nothing. I am putting that on AI, and episode 5 named other candidates that have not gone away. So, the cheapest reconstruction, and it starts from a question this series walked away from. In episode 7 the team priced their new hire to a first productive year, and the number that mattered was not the salary. It was senior time, reviewing and pairing and re-explaining, which they put between 4 and 8 hours a week for the first 6 months. Then somebody asked where that is booked. It is not a line, not a cost center, not a field in the planning tool, and no forecast has a row for it. It is absorbed in silence inside senior salaries, by people measured on something else. The most important input to this trade's continuity is financially invisible. So the technique is one sentence long. Book supervision as production. The reason to start in that hour is that the teaching is already inside it, and episode 2 put a document underneath that. 1976, Michael Fagan, Design and Code Inspections in the IBM Systems Journal, and what the industry took was the number. 23%, the measured increase in the productivity of the coding operation. What nobody took is the column beside it, the objective of each operation. Overview, education. Preparation, education. Inspection, find errors. 2 of the 5 operations exist for teaching, by the author's own statement, and a note under the table says so. The moderator, he says, is the coach, and this feedback belongs to the programmer and must never be used for performance appraisal. So the function I am asking you to fund is half a century old, and was designed in rather than missed. Intent does not survive adoption. Only the number does. Now what booking it actually means. A line in the tracker with a name against it, an owner, and a number of hours planned rather than discovered afterwards. That is the whole mechanical change, and it costs nothing, because the hours are already being spent. You are not buying supervision. You are admitting to it. And I will not oversell it, because booking it does not make it cheaper and on its own it does not make it better. The last series learned that on a review policy bypassed in the week it was written. The policy did not prevent the bypass. It made the bypass countable. A written budget's first product is not compliance, it is visibility. Then the shape of what you have booked. It is a rota. Not an open door, not a mentor named in an onboarding document, not a senior who is willing to help, because all 3 depend on who the junior happens to sit next to. A rota is a written schedule of who supervises what, when, and for how long, and it belongs in the file the on-call rota lives in. On-call is written down because the cost of it being informal is an outage nobody answers. Formation is written down because the cost of it being informal is a person nobody forms. And the review inside it is not the review you already do. A teaching review says out loud what an ordinary review leaves implicit, including which errors this person is most prone to, said to them and to nobody above them. That is Fagan's moderator, revived, and pointed at diffs a machine wrote. Which brings the mapping I promised last episode. The last series sorted work into 3 tiers by blast radius, Tier 1 whatever you cannot take back, Tier 2 the ordinary product surface, Tier 3 throwaway and declared exempt in writing. And it said the tier belongs to the blast radius, never to the hands the code came out of. Tiering by author was named a category error there, and it is still a category error here. Tier 1, nobody works alone, and that includes the tech lead. Tier 2, the new hire works supervised until an agreed and written point, and after it they do not. Tier 3 is theirs from the first day. Every one of those is a staffing decision about who works with whom. Not one of them is a review standard. Nobody's work gets a softer review because a junior produced it, and nobody's gets a harsher one either. The tier sets the review floor. That floor is blind to whose hands the work came out of, and supervision only ever adds on top of it. Then the content of those hours, which is what turns a rota into a curriculum. The last series ended on 11 techniques for working with these tools, and I want 3 jobs out of them, which come from 2 of the 11 rather than 3, because two of the jobs live inside one technique. The junior runs the golden set, 50 tickets, the same 50 every time, and owns the number that comes back off it. The junior staffs the error analysis, reading every failure and sorting them into piles, which is where that team found 11 of 19 failures in a single pile, a refund window the model invented and stated with total confidence. And the junior drafts the kill criteria, then defends them in the room before anybody knows the result. All three are real, a customer feels them, the blast radius is bounded, and nobody invented them to keep somebody busy. So the team designed a first rotation, and as always this is our own worked example, labeled as ours, not anybody's measurement. 6 weeks, 3 blocks. Block 1, the new hire pairs on the redaction path, which is Tier 1, and never touches it alone, because on Tier 1 nobody does, including the tech lead. Block 2, they own the golden set and the error analysis behind it, Tier 2, supervised on a named day each week, and the block writes down what ends the supervision, which is 2 consecutive cycles where the manager changes nothing. The suggester was killed, and the redaction path and that 50-ticket set outlived it. Block 3, they draft the kill criteria for the next thing, and defend them to the people who will vote. The tech lead owns Block 1 and the manager owns Blocks 2 and 3, because a rota that rests on one person is not a rota. And the cost is 6 hours a week, out of the 4 to 8 the team was already spending, booked as production with a name on the line. Nothing new is being spent. It stopped being invisible. Then the grade, scored against the rubric rather than asserted, because that rubric was published before any candidate answer was examined, which is the only reason it can embarrass this one. The team scored 4 of 10 last episode, and 3 rows move, one of them only halfway. Legitimate stays at 2, because the work was always real. Peripheral goes from 1 to 2, because the block writes the exit down and the bound was already there. Contact does not move, and this is the row where a rota stops being enough. It schedules the contact, which is better than hoping, but the rubric wants it shared across more than one holder, and one tech lead is still the only person who holds the theory. A rota cannot manufacture a second head. Designed feedback goes from 0 to 1, because the loop now has a purpose and an owner and is written down nowhere, which is 2 parts of the 3 the rubric asks for. And density goes from 0 to 1. The old 0 meant I could not answer the counting question at all, and now I can, because block 2 repeats, so I score the 1 and then say that what I can count is not the thing I want them to be good at. 7 of 10, up from 4. 2 rows did not move, one of them because it was already at the ceiling and one because a rota buys no repetitions. Now the limits, and there are 5. This is not a saving. Booking supervision makes it visible, and episode 7's problem is intact, which is that if that person leaves at 18 months somebody else gets the trained engineer at a market wage or year paid for, and there is no invoice anybody can send. Second, the instrument has been applied exactly twice, both times by me, to answers I chose, so it is a pre-commitment rather than a tested thing. Third, the 2 conditions I have just scored come from Lave and Wenger, who hoped their perspective would inform educational work and in the same breath called attributing a prescriptive value to it very different from what they were doing. Their refusal is not their endorsement, and their hope is not their blessing. Fourth, the moderator underneath row 4 was observed and not assigned. It is a direction to look, not a lever. And fifth, the rubric's own warning turned on its author. A score out of 10 invites managing the number, and I have argued 2 rows upward on air. The arguments are on the card, and if one of them is wrong the argument is worth more than the total. Your exercise, and it is a do this rather than a watch this. Book 1 hour of supervision as production in your tracker this week, visibly, where the team can see it. 1 hour. Give it a name, give it an owner, and let it sit beside the feature work rather than underneath it. Then note who objects, and to what. If somebody says it does not belong on the board because it is not delivery, you have just learned exactly where formation sits in your organization's ledger, and in an afternoon rather than in an exit interview. The objection is the finding. The artifact is the supervision budget line and the rotation template, linked below with this episode's receipts. You will know it worked when the rota survives a bad quarter. If it is the first thing cut, it was overhead the whole time and was only wearing a costume. Next episode is the half this one cannot do. Everything here buys legitimacy, a bounded place to stand, and people who hold the theory, and almost no repetitions. Rotas by contact, and contact is not practice. The row that moved least is the one with no paper behind it, which is mine, and I have said so since I wrote it. You cannot skip the years. You can only make them denser. So next episode the practice gets manufactured by the same technology that took it away.